Hi, I'd like to welcome you all to Book Passage and gather us together for an incredible evening. I'm so glad you're all here in support of your local independent bookstore. We really appreciate it. And tonight, Book Passage is absolutely thrilled to welcome Jodi Picoult and Samantha van Leer, best-selling authors and mother-daughter duo. We at Book Passage have adored each and every one of Jodi's 23 best-selling novels. But when her incredibly gifted and talented daughter, Samantha, pitched her mother the idea for the book Between the Lines, we were utterly amazed at their exponential literary talent together. And they have done it again. Tonight we get to hear all about their latest book, Off the Page, which acts as both a standalone novel or as a companion piece to Between the Lines. It's so much fun seeing these characters come to life, and it's wonderfully readable, well-crafted, but I warn you, it's really difficult to put down. So once you get into it, just, give yourself the weekend, or maybe it'll even just be a day, I don't know, but it's really hard to put down. So with that, I warmly welcome Jodi Picoult.
It's a holiday weekend, so you guys have nothing to do but read, right? So I thought that what I would do first is tell you a little bit about how these books came to be before we do our reading, and then let you guys ask us some questions. As you just heard, this book, the original book, Between the Lines, was Sammy's idea. She was 13 years old. She called me up when I was on a book tour, and she said, "I think I have a really good idea for a book." And I said, "All right, let's hear it." She said, "Well, what if every time you closed a book, the characters inside it had lives and personalities that were different from the roles that they played in the book. But when a reader opened the book, they had to jump right back into Act 1, Scene 1. And what if there was a prince in a fairy tale who was really sick of being a prince in a fairy tale and didn't know how to get anyone to see him as anything but that, until there was a reader on the outside who was a 15-year-old girl and was kind of obsessed with a children's fairy tale because the prince who was illustrated in it was very attractive. And one day she realized that he was talking to her and wanted her help getting out of the book." When Sammy told me this, I said, "Wow, my daughter's brilliant," because, who hasn't had a literary crush, right? My current crush, I've moved on from Mr. Darcy. I'm now currently obsessed with Jamie Fraser from Outlander. If you've read that series, he's mine. Step back. But I suggested that we sit down and we write this book together. And as I said, Sammy was 13 at the time. She had a day job. She was a student. So we could only write during the times that she was not in school. So we spent 3 summers working on Between the Lines. We wrote it one summer, we edited it the second summer, and then the third summer we toured 3 continents for it. And I'm sure you'll have questions about how we worked together, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I can tell you is that when we finished writing this and we went on tour for the first book, everyone would ask Sammy all the time at every event, "Are you going to be a writer?" And she would say, "God, no, this was really hard." And it took her a while to come around to wanting to write again. She is currently a sophomore. No, you're not. You're a junior. Oh, yeah. She just finished her sophomore year at college. And at the middle of her freshman year, she called me up and she said, "I really miss writing." And I said, "You write every day." And she said, "Yeah, but I don't write." And she said, "I was thinking maybe we could write the next installment this summer." And so that's what we did. Last summer we sat down and we wrote Between the Lines 8 hours a day, side by side in my office. And this time editing it was even more of a challenge because, as I said, she was in college. So we edited via speakerphone from 10 to 12 midnight, every night for a month. And that was how Off the Page came to be. When I think about Off the Page and the difference between it and Between the Lines, Between the Lines is a really sweet story. And it's about what happily ever after is and how we get happily ever after. But Off the Page goes one step further and says, are there consequences to getting your happily ever after? And because of that, it's a book that is a little more twisty, a little darker. There's more at stake. And for both of us, I think it was a lot more fun to write. And again, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, during the questions and answers. But what we're going to do now is introduce you, or reintroduce you, to our 2 main characters, Oliver, our prince, and Delilah, the girl who basically read him to life. So Sammy is going to be Delilah.
Okay, just make sure you can all hear. Okay, so this is Delilah. I've been waiting my whole life for Oliver, so you think another 15 minutes wouldn't matter. But it's 15 minutes that Oliver is alone on a bus, unmonitored, for the first time, with the most ruthless, malicious, soul-sucking creatures on earth. High school students. Going to high school is a little like being told you have to get up each morning and run headlong at 60 miles an hour into the same brick wall. After years, I've gotten pretty good at being invisible. That way, you're less likely to become a target. But Oliver knows none of this. He's always been the center of attention. He's even more undeveloped socially than the boy who enrolled last year after 9 years of being homeschooled in a yurt. Which is exactly why I'm breaking a sweat, imagining everything Oliver could be doing wrong. At this point, he's probably 10 minutes into a story about the first dragon he ever encountered. While he might think it's a great icebreaker, the rest of the bus will either peg him as the new druggie in town, or as one of those kids who run around speaking Elvish. Either way, that kind of first impression is the one that sticks for the rest of your life. Believe me, I know. I've spent my entire school career as that girl, the one who wrote VD Rocks on all her second grade Valentines, and who literally walked into a wall once while reading a book. The one who recently reaffirmed her subterranean spot on the social status totem pole by accidentally punching out Allie McAndrews, the most popular girl in school. Oliver and I make a fabulous couple. Speaking of which, I kind of still can't believe we are one. Girls spend their lives dreaming of that perfect guy, but they always wind up settling when they realize he doesn't exist. I found mine, but he was trapped inside a fairy tale. How he came to be real and mine is a long story, but it's been the biggest adventure of my life. Just then, Oliver's bus pulls up to the front of the school. You know how there are some moments in your life when time just slows down, when you remember every detail, how the wind feels against your face, how the freshly cut grass smells, how snippets of conversation become a dull background buzz, and how in that instant, there's only the beat of your heart and the breath that you draw, and the person whose eyes lock with yours. Oliver is the last one to step off the bus. His dark hair is ruffled by the breeze. He's wearing the white shirt and jeans I picked out for him and an unzipped hoodie. He walks towards me as if there aren't 300 people staring at him, the new kid. As if it doesn't matter in the least that the popular girls are tossing their hair and batting their lashes like they're at a photo shoot, or that the jocks are all sizing them up as competition. He walks as if the only thing he can see is me. Oliver swings me in a circle like I weigh nothing at all. "Hello," he says, and he kisses me. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, their mouths gaping. Not gonna lie, I could get used to this. I met Oliver inside a book. Last year, I got obsessed with a kid's fairy tale, in particular with the prince who was illustrated throughout the pages. Now, lots of readers crush on fictional characters, but mine turned out to be not so fictional. Oliver wanted out of his book, where every day was the same, and into a life that didn't have such a rigid plot line. We had a bunch of failed attempts, including a trip to Cape Cod to find the author of the book, Jessamine Jacobs, who had written the story for her son after his dad died. As it turned out, Edgar was a dead ringer for Oliver, and just the replacement we needed for the book. For the past 3 months, Edgar's been living in the fairy tale, and Oliver's been living here, impersonating him. American accent, teenage moods, 21st century clothing and all. As Oliver and I walk down the hall, I realize that he's doing the Queen's wave. I grab his hand and pull it down. "These are not your subjects," I whisper, but I can't help smiling. I stop in front of Bank of Lockers. "This one's yours." He tugs on the lock, frowning at the numerical puzzle of the combination. Then suddenly he pulls out a dagger and hacks it against the metal. "Oh my God!" I shout, grabbing the knife and stuffing it into my backpack before anyone else can see. "Do you want to get arrested?" "I'm really not that tired," Oliver says. "No knives. Ever. Understand?" His eyes flicker with remorse. "There's just so much here that's different." "I know. That's why you've got me. I take off the numeric lock using the code on the back of Oliver's schedule and replace it with a padlock whose combination is 5 letters. Watch, I say, using my thumb to roll the wheels until they spell E-D-A-H-E. Everyone deserves a happy ending. I think I can remember that, he grins. You know what else I remember? The first time I saw you, you were wearing that shirt. When he looks at me like that, I can't even remember my name, much less what I'm wearing today. I was, and I remember the first time I did this, he adds, and he leans in and kisses me. Suddenly I hear a voice over my shoulder. A boy says, "You guys are like kind of draped across my locker." Oh God, I've become one of those couples. Immediately I shove Oliver away and tuck my hair behind my ears. "Sorry," I mutter, "won't happen again." I clear my throat. "I'm Delilah." The kid jerks the metal door open and looks at me. "Chris," he says. Oliver extends his hand. "I'm Edgar," I interrupt. "His name is Edgar." "Yes, right," Oliver says. "That is my name." "I feel like I haven't seen you before," I say to Chris. "I'm new, just moved here from Detroit." "I just moved here too," Oliver replies. "Oh yeah, where from?" "The kingdom of Cape Cod," I blurt out. Chris snorts. "She doesn't let you talk much, man." He shuts his locker and with a wave walks down the hall. Oliver watches him. How come he's allowed to wave? I have enough time to drop Oliver off at English before I have to head to French. As we turn the corner, my best friend Jules slips behind us. "Guess who broke up," she says. Ryan Douglas and Allie McAndrews. Oliver looks at me questioning. "Prom queen and king," I explain quickly. He looks impressed. "Royalty." "They think they are," Jules agrees. As if we're watching a soap opera, Allie turns the corner, flanked by her posse. From the opposite direction, simultaneously, Ryan swaggers down the hall. "Oh, look, what a rare sighting," Allie says loudly. "A man-slut in the wild." Ryan looks her up and down. "Did you eat all your feelings, Allie?" At that, Allie propels herself at him, claws out. Before I realize what's happening, Oliver heads straight for Ryan. "Aw, crap," Jules says. "You had to date a hero." Everyone is looking at him as if he's a champion, including Allie McAndrews. What happens next is so fast I can barely see it. Ryan socks Oliver so hard that he gets knocked out cold. I fly to Oliver's side and help him sit up. That's when I see it. The trickle of black from his nose, the stains on his white shirt. "Oliver," I whisper, "you're inking."
This is Oliver. It's been 5 whole minutes and my face still looks like I've been clobbered by a giant. I've literally jumped into the fiery mouth of a dragon and leaped off 50-foot cliffs into the ocean, yet I've recovered faster than I have from this measly blow. Plus, it hurts. "Delilah," I say, swallowing, "I fear I'm dying." "You're not dying. You got sucker punched. I should have healed already." "Only inside your book," Delilah says. "In the real world, you can't just turn a page and feel better." I must admit, this is not quite the start I was expecting. I've been rather excited about the idea of going to school. Delilah makes it sound like being chained in a dungeon, but to me it's anything but that. I've been chained in a dungeon before. Even getting walloped by a stranger is exciting and unexpected and different from the same 60 pages I've repeated my whole life. "You have to get to class," Delilah says. "You're already late. Say you got lost. No one will question a new student on the first day. Remember, just follow your schedule and I'll meet you at lunch. And Oliver, you can do this." I watch her walk away. When Delilah talks like that, it's easy to remember why I gave up everything I knew in order to be with her. She believes in me, and if someone believes in you wholeheartedly, you start to believe in yourself as well. I've been performing all my life. This is just another role. I have a sudden flash of Frump, my best friend in the fairy tale, his tail wagging as a reader cracks open the book. I wonder if Frump is rounding up the cast even now. I wonder if they miss me. But I have my own work to do here. I push open the door of the classroom and take a seat. The teacher, a woman with frizzy gray hair, faces the whiteboard, scrawling. "What's in a name?" Ms. Pingree asks. "That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. I know the script from which she's quoting. It was a book that Queen Maureen read over and over, the most classic of love stories. So I jumped to my feet, strolling up the central aisle. I take thee at thy word, I say, letting loose the reins on my British accent. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized henceforth. I never will be Romeo. For a moment, she's speechless, no doubt swooning at my excellent thespian chops. Well, she says, recovering, I see the gods have granted my wishes and finally given me a student worth teaching. I'm Edgar, I say, mimicking the flat American sounds of everyone else's speech. New kid in town. Thank you, Edgar, for joining me in a rousing performance from our first assignment, Romeo and Juliet. Mark, Helen, Allie, come help me pass out books. I take my seat again, feeling awfully chuffed. Wait till Delilah hears about this. Suddenly, a book is slipped onto my desk, pushed closer by a slender hand with red polish. I look up to find the very girl who precipitated the fight that led to my morning beating, Delilah's nemesis, Allie McAndrews. Her lips turn up in a half smile, as if she knows a secret and I don't. Maybe for once, she says. English will be interesting. At midday, when I enter the cafeteria, I find Delilah. Delilah, this place is extraordinary, I say, beaming. There must be hundreds of students in this school, and each one is a mystery. In chemistry, I get to choose who my scene partner is. Lab partner? Yes, that's what it's called. And the best part is nothing about my day has anything to do with saving a princess. Congratulations, Delilah says, but trust me, the novelty wears off. Then I notice someone waving. It's Allie from my English class, seated with her ladies-in-waiting. Edgar, she says, you can sit with us. I'm so sorry, I already have plans for lunch period. Allie's gaze follows mine to light on Delilah. Her hand touches my arm. Just so you know, she says coolly, I'm kind of a big deal at this school. So when you're done geeking out with the village loser, text me. She pulls out a sparkly pink pen and writes a series of numbers on my forearm, punctuating it with a fat heart. Allie requested a text, I tell Delilah. Do you think she might enjoy Beowulf? Were you flirting with her? Why would I be interested in Allie McAndrews? I wait for her to meet my gaze. I've got you. I reach for her hand, and as I do, I notice Allie's numbers. Twisting so they can't be seen, I thread my fingers through Delilah's. You and I? Are we okay? She looks away. Sure, Delilah says, but her smile doesn't quite light her eyes. I smile back, or try to anyway, because if there's anything I know, it's when someone's acting. When I get home for my first day of high school, the woman who is not my mother, yet who created me, is waiting. How did it go? Jessamine asks. Scale of 1 to 10? 500, I reply. It was spectacular. You've never been such a big fan of school before, Jessamine says. Every time we have a conversation, I feel as if I'm being interrogated. I take a deep breath and paste a smile on my face. I was gobsmacked by my English teacher, I tell her, pulling a carton of milk from the refrigerator and drinking from the spout because Delilah says this is what teen boys do. Gobsmacked, she repeats. You know, you've been picking up a lot of slang that seems a little out of character for you. I rummage through the refrigerator looking for something else to satisfy my perpetual hunger. I take a small container and reach inside with my fingers. No, Jessamine cries. Don't you know what that is? Pineapple? I wonder if this is another trick question. Which gives you hives? Right, forgot. You forgot the week you spent in the hospital when your throat closed up and you couldn't breathe? It's been a long day, I say, and I flee before I do anything else wrong. I'm in my room absorbed in my studies when I hear a chime on the computer. Delilah's face fills the screen. I wonder if this is the way she saw me when I was inside the book, close enough to touch but two-dimensional. What are you up to? Chemistry, I say. Tell me, in what part of the word iron do you find the F-E? Ferrous, it means iron. Then why isn't it called that? Because chemistry is a whole special circle of hell, Delilah says. Why don't you come over here, we can figure it out together. After Delilah's overreaction to Allie McAndrews writing on my arm, I'm relieved to know she still wishes to see me, but all the same I scrub those numbers off my skin before I leave home. I tell Jessamine that Delilah's mother has invited me for dinner and take Edgar's bike from the garage. Delilah's home is a short ride away, but it's all uphill. As I huff my way to her house, I think longingly of Socks, my stallion, who used to be the one doing all the work when we traveled. When I ring the bell, Delilah answers and we go upstairs. She leaves the door open a crack. That's her mother's rule, and the only way I'm even allowed in her room. When I asked her why I couldn't be trusted, she said it's because chivalry really is dead. I know every inch of her bedroom because I had to draw it in excruciating detail during one of our failed attempts to get me out of the book. It's very pink, and she has so many stuffed animals piled on her mattress I have no idea where she sleeps. I flop onto her bed. Delilah stretches out beside me, propping her head on one hand. There is 6 inches of space between us, and it is excruciating. I slip my arm into the curve of her waist and pull her closer. Aren't we supposed to be working on your chemistry? Delilah whispers. Oh, we are. Once Orville told me that when stars collide, universes are born, galaxies expand. That's how it feels when I kiss Delilah, like the whole world just doubled in size. It's odd. Love in the fairy tale always felt so fast, skipping over the details to get to the happy ending. With Delilah, I don't miss a single moment. I notice how she chews her pencil when she's nervous, how when I touch her hand, she jumps as if there's been an electric shock, how when she says my name, it's softer than any other word in the sentence. Suddenly, Delilah pushes herself away and leaps off the bed. What's wrong? Delilah points behind me and I turn around. Hanging in midair are 2 words I hoped I'd never see. Come home. Thanks. So before we let you guys pepper us with questions, we have a little game for you. We have the opportunity for you to win fabulous prizes. 3 fabulous attempts to win 3 fabulous prizes. And it's a little trivia contest. And what we're going to do is ask you, if you know the answer, to raise your hand but not call it out because you will be disqualified. And that was really fun. And so if you know the answer, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And if you get it right, then you win. Now, some of you who may follow me on social media know that we have been showing some Prince Oliver videos of him adapting to the new world. And hopefully you have been watching these because some of the questions will be coming from that. I'm seeing everyone look around going, what's going on? I should have been watching the videos. I should have followed Jodi on Twitter. What is happening? All right, let's see if you can get this right. If not, then, well, I'm afraid you'll all just fail for the day. Okay, name 1 food item that Prince Oliver tries to cook in the toaster. Yes.
Eggs.
Yes! Yay! So much. Where does Sammy go to college? Yes.
Vassar.
Yay! Vassar. Okay, this is for all the people who read Between the Lines and hopefully loved it. What is Captain Crab's secret profession? Yes.
Dentist.
Yes! Yay! You all did great. Awesome. 1,000 points for the Bay Area. Okay, so now we're going to let you guys ask us questions, and you can ask anything at all. The only thing that I ask is that if you happen to ask about one of my adult novels, please do not give away the ending or I'm going to have to do physical damage to you. So, does anyone have any questions for us? Yeah?
How did you first get into writing?
Me?
Yes.
I've been writing my whole life. My mom says the first book I wrote was when I was 5 years old, and it was called The Lobster That Misunderstood, and I illustrated it too. And you know, I honestly loved writing as a kid and went to a college that would allow me to study creative writing with real authors. I went to Princeton. I would not be here today if not for one particular writer and mentor named Mary Morris. I never imagined, though, that I would be writing as a living, because really, who do you know who writes for a living, right? So that was some hard work and some luck, and you know, honestly, the truth is I'd be a writer even if nobody read anything I ever wrote. It's just honestly a lot more fun this way. Yeah.
So I read a lot of your adult books, and it covers a lot of different topics, and I love that. Where do you find your inspiration?
So when I'm writing my adult books, the stories tend to come from what-if questions that I can't answer. And they're usually things that keep me up at night. If I find myself thinking about it 2 or 3 nights in a row, it's probably a very good idea for a book.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah.
Are both of you, are you more inspired to write when you're happy or sad?
Oh, I'm totally letting you answer that one.
Okay, well, for this book, I think I wrote best when I was happy. because I think that was better for a co-author relationship. We were both in positive spirits. But I think for my other writing, I just like random poetry and things like that. I think just any emotion, really. Honestly, I think sadness is the easiest form to write in, personally.
This is so depressing, really?
Totally is. You have more to say about being sad than you do about being happy.
Are you trying to tell me something I should know as your mother? All right, wait. In my defense, she wrote an entire thing. Remember her book on death? She had to write all a poetry anthology on death. That was like a senior project. And I was like, do you want to tell me
to
something?
be fair, it wasn't about like the sadness of death. That was finding beauty in death, which is also okay. That's kind of
creepy.
It sounds creepy.
Yeah.
But it was good.
So when we started working on this book, Sammy's requirement to write the sequel was that when we went up to my office, she had to have a rolly chair next to mine, because when we wrote Between the Lines, she was sitting in a, what is it called?
A womb chair.
It's like a Papasan chair. Do you know those things? The big, yeah.
On the ground.
Right. And so she would sit in that, and she didn't like that. And so
because she's literally looking down on us. How different.
So anyway, I promised I'd get her this rolly chair. So keep in mind, I work in an attic, so our staircases are really narrow. So my poor husband has to literally take the entire chair apart and reconfigure it up in the attic so that she has a matching chair next to mine. And we get up there, we start writing, and I would say accurately 98% of the time, 98% of the time she spent wrapped in a down comforter on the floor, talking up at me. You know, so she never sat in the chair.
The point of the chair is that I knew we were now equal authors because I got her to do something.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the process that when you write together? Is it word? Is it idea and you do it, or what's the process like?
So a lot of people think usually when they read our book that we each wrote a chapter, like we split.
Just like we did, like we just
as if she wrote Oliver and I wrote Delilah. But the truth is that we wrote every word together. We would spend my summers, as my mom said, writing 8 hours a day, every day in her office. We would sit side by side, and we had a list of kind of how we wanted the book to go, but we would just talk the entire thing out. I would say a sentence while my mom typed, and then she would reply with a sentence. We'd just go back and forth like that. And it was a little bit freaky. I think it's genetics personally, but there would be moments where we both have this amazing idea and we're stumbling over each other to get out our idea, and we realize we're saying the exact same thing and seeing the exact same thing, which is a little bit freaky.
And it was actually, the way she just said that, you reminded me of that, because we've done a couple of events, but she talks about writing as if it's a very visual thing. She's seeing it in her head, and when she's talking the words out loud, you're describing what you're seeing. And that's what I've always said when people say, well, what is it like to write? I say, it's like I'm watching a film, and all of you are deaf and dumb and blind, and I'm trying to communicate to you what I'm seeing. So it was really interesting. The first time she said that in an interview, I almost fell off the chair, because I was like, wow, maybe like it is a mental thing, and her brain is modeled the same way mine is. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, two questions. Well, first for you then is I read some of your adult novels and I find them heartbreaking in a beautiful way.
That's accurate. Yeah.
And just wondering, because I like to write too, or I'm aspiring to be a writer, and just how do you have the heart to do it to some of your characters?
Yeah, my characters are really stupid, I have to say. If they made good choices, the books would be really short, right? So the good thing about having characters who make mistakes is that it spins out over 400 pages. There are plenty of times I've wanted to take a character and shove her against the wall and go, wake up! But you can't do that. Honestly, every time I break your heart as a reader, I have a really good reason for doing it. So trust me. But that said, I think, for whatever reason, it's the story that needed to be told a certain way. I always know the ending before I write a book, before I start writing a book, and I have never changed an ending over the process of writing one of my adult books. It always, how I get there changes, but the ending always has stayed the same. So I feel pretty rooted in the story that I need to tell. you'll see. Create enough characters and you'll want to get rid of them too. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I did. This one's specifically for Samantha. Because actually I'm the same age as you, and just wondering if you have any tips for young aspiring authors.
Yeah. So my number one tip for writing is to finish what you write. Because that is the hardest part of writing. I know that when I was younger, I had about 15, 30-page stories that just were never finished. They were just the intros because I'd get bored with it and I'd already have a new idea in mind and I'd just hop from story to story. And so because of that, I never actually finished a story until this one. So having a schedule to finish that story, even when you're sick of it and you're bored and you have nothing more to say, just get it through to the end because it will feel amazing, I promise, when you finish. And also to create a schedule to write every day. I was really lucky because I had to. I had my mom right there saying, okay, well, you know what, it's 9:30, we're going upstairs now. So if you can get someone to kind of like whip you into shape like that, that's awesome, whether it's like a teacher or a parent or just yourself creating that schedule. To make sure that you do write every day because that's going to help you get to the end and to make sure that you are writing. My mom always says that you can edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank one. And it's really true. Even if you are writing total crap that day, completely uninspired, and you're like, this is just going in my trash can, it's okay. You can get rid of it later, but you can say you wrote that day, you can say you're that much closer to the end.
And just to add to that, psychologically, the reason that novice writers don't finish things is really interesting. And it doesn't matter if you're young or if you're my age. The reason that you don't finish is because in the back of your head somewhere, you realize that if you finish a story and it's not as good as you thought it would be, you are not as good a writer as you thought you'd be. And so not finishing it keeps you from having to judge yourself poorly. So it's a huge psychological hurdle that you actually have to leap if you want to be a writer. You have to be brave enough to finish something, look at your work objectively, and then you can say, once something's finished, okay, really, I'm totally tossing this out because this is not working. Or you can say, I'm going to fix it. But if you don't finish it, you will never know if you can finish something. So it's a really important point that she made. What was the question over here? Yeah.
I have a couple more. I'll ask one at a time.
Oh, great.
What out of all the characters you've ever written out of any books, who have you found that was either your favorite to write or that you've ended up falling in love with? And
Oh, well, those are different questions, aren't they? Yeah. So the characters that I loved to write were, there were some that were just really fun voices. Jacob Hunt from House Rules, who has Asperger's, was so much fun to write as a narrator. I loved writing Ian Fletcher, who's a television atheist. He was a blast to write. I loved writing Serenity in Leaving Time. She was a lot of fun. So those are among my favorites. The character I fell madly in love with was Patrick Ducharme. So much so that I kept bringing him back in several books just because I really wanted to see him again.
Yeah. This is more moving in closer and closer. And we start chapter 5 together, and you're working, just randomly chapter 5. Do you guys say, this is what I want to know specifically? It could be chapter 6 or chapter 4. Do you specifically set out what are we going to write about in this chapter before you start, or are you just really randomly going line by line throwing stuff out?
So we had a day before we actually started writing that we were just out at dinner, and I told my mom, I have a couple ideas, and I kind of started spewing stuff, and that story that the movie that my mom was saying is playing in your mind just kind of turned on, and I was like, oh, okay, so here's what's happening. And she took out her phone and started writing everything down. So when we actually went to sit down and write, we had a list of things that we were saying were going to happen, and we had them in order. And we kind of just wrote and hit each point along the journey. And sometimes points were dropped and sometimes things were added throughout the book. We'd have a little idea or something that would pop out during like lunch or while writing. And so we'd add it to the list. But we didn't actually like have a storyboard plot scene by scene, chapter by chapter. It was more just, we have to just follow the map, basically.
But also in our case, because off the page there are 3 different narrative voices, part of that meant that each narrator had to advance the plot in his or her place at a given moment. And so if we were last with Delilah, but we hadn't been with Edgar in a while. We needed to know what was going on in Edgar's life and how would that inform what was next going to happen when Oliver started talking. So it was a little bit like constantly juggling 3 balls and making sure that you were still advancing the plot and the narrative forward.
What was the hardest book for you to write? Because you do really heavy emotional books.
Oh, I was going to ask that one. Hardest book for me to write, they're different. Again, there's differences in what you mean by hard. The physically hardest book for me to write was probably The 10th Circle, because the research took me to the Alaskan tundra in January when it was 38 degrees below zero, and the only way to get to the Yupik Eskimo village where I was staying was on the back of a snow machine on a frozen river 100 miles north of the only city that is on the map in, this area. And yeah, that wasn't fun. And, so that was physically trying. Also, I had food poisoning at the time, so that made it even worse. But then there are the ones that are really emotional. It's really hard to do research with parents of kids who have cancer. And for me, that book, My Sister's Keeper, had a real personal connection. I don't often write about things that happened to me in my life, which is really good because, as you pointed out, my characters are pretty miserable. But in My Sister's Keeper, the genesis for that book came in part from my own son. One of Sammy's brothers, my middle child, had benign tumors in his ears when he was a little kid. And although it wasn't a cancer, it was something that could burrow into your brain if you didn't surgically remove it, and traditionally leaves a child permanently deaf. Jake had 13 surgeries in 3 years, wound up profoundly deaf in his left ear and with marginal hearing in his right ear, and he actually right now is singing with a very famous a cappella group, the Whiffenpoofs, all over 22 countries in Europe, and I think they're in Norway right now. We don't know why he can sing. His own surgeon doesn't know why he can sing. It's like this little miracle. But at the time this was going on, it was a real imbalance in our family, because when a kid has some kind of special need, all the attention gloms onto that kid. And that was what really led me to write My Sister's Keeper. The other book that was very hard for me was Sing You Home. Again, because it was a very personal connection. It was when I was writing this book about gay rights and gay parenting, and happy Harvey Milk Day, everyone. How cool that I'm here on Harvey Milk Day. I was writing this book about gay rights and gay marriage and gay parenting, and my own son, my oldest son, not the one with the hearing loss, the other one, Kyle, came out to us when he was 18. And, all of a sudden I wasn't just writing a book, I was like a mom with a mission. And part of my research for that book involved speaking to Focus on the Family out in Colorado. And I went out there. They run conventions so that people who are gay and do not want to be can go to these conventions, and they apparently can make you not gay. Right, so that's what they say. And so I was speaking to their head of PR, and we were having a very heated conversation, taking apart the Bible and putting it back together. And then I said to her, because they also have the strongest lobbying arm in Washington against gay rights, and I said, do you worry that some of the beliefs that you have and the beliefs that you espouse have led to violence against gay people? And she said, well, thank goodness that has never happened. And I looked at her and I said, have you ever heard the name Matthew Shepard? And she said, who? No, and it wasn't. I was like, I felt so sick, and I had to get up, and I went to the bathroom, and I had to splash water on my face because I thought I was going to kill this woman. And I had to come back out now wearing my researcher cap and not my mom hat. So sometimes that makes a book hard too, that it's hard for me to separate being a writer and being a human. Right. Yeah. I just want to say, this side of the audience, what's going on?
Tell us about your worst day that you two had writing together.
Please, can I tell it? It's okay.
I don't like be fair.
Be fair. I am fair. I'm totally fair. Okay, so it was our last day. So, and I have to say, we should say we argued a lot more writing this book than we did on the first one. And part of that was because Sammy was, I think, a lot more confident. She had a book under her belt. She felt like her opinion mattered. And she was not about to let me get away with everything. No, so literally everything I said, she would challenge me on, and vice versa. We just were constantly butting heads. And actually, it made, I think, for a better book in the long run. But it was the last day, and it should have been a really easy day. We were like tweaking and writing these little tiny sections that were polishes more than anything else. It was like the frosting on the cake. And you were in a mood. You were just in a mood that day.
And you were.
So comes up to the office, and like everything I said, she was like, absolutely not. No. And we just could not agree on anything. We were screaming at each other. And in the middle of all of this, while I'm trying to figure out if anyone will notice if I throw her body out of the window, my husband comes up. And he comes up with a plate of steamed dumplings. He's got this big smile on his face, and he goes, look, you guys, look at what I brought you. And we both turn to him and we go, we don't want that right now. And so he's like, okay, I'll take them down. And we go, no, leave them. He left these dumplings, and I just want to say we ate every last dumpling, and we finished the day. Like, I remember writing the last line. I said, okay, I think we're done. And you went, fine. And I went, fine. And then she went downstairs. And that was the end of the writing experience. So it was that was a really hard day for some reason.
Now, Sammy, could you tell the story?
Yeah, you tell the story.
I came upstairs and my mom was a dragon. No, it basically went like that. But she was also being so it was as I said, it's better to work happy when you have a partner. I think we just both we were so done. So done. We needed some time apart. It was like into the 3rd month of writing every day 8 hours together. So when you're with someone that much, they either die or
they get killed.
They die.
Right. Yeah.
Are you aware that in Between the Lines you said that Edgar's father's name was Isaac, and then in this book you said it was Joseph?
Interesting. Did we really? Yeah. Perhaps his name was Isaac Joseph. No, honestly, I had no idea. I don't think we ever did. We actually couldn't figure out was it Grace? Yeah, we couldn't figure out Delilah's mother's name either. We spent a really long time trying to remember what the heck her name was by going back over and over the manuscript. So I'm sorry, I would tell you it's a typo, but really it's because we're stupid. But we love that readers like you know, actually. Yes.
So it's a segue. So I'm curious from both your collaborative project and also your adult books. Do you edit while writing? Do you wait to get to the end of the story before you start editing? Or how do you handle that that lovely part?
Oh, call it like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, my favorite editorial story actually was from Between the Lines, because Sammy was still really young when we were writing that. And I mean, she is really young, but she was 15. And the thing about working with a teenager is that there's no filter. So the things that we adult writers really want to say to our editors, she was just saying. So we get our editorial letter.
Not to the editor.
No, not to the editor, just that right. So we got our editorial letter, and I don't know if you realize that editors don't actually edit. Editors send you a letter that has one paragraph at the beginning saying, I love this book so much, and then 6 pages telling you why they didn't like it. And you have to fix all the things they didn't like. So, right? That's exactly what it's like. So we get our editorial letter in, and I'm sitting at the desk, and I read Sammy all these points, right? And she looks at me and she goes, how haven't you killed Emily yet? Like my editor. I just thought it was the funniest thing, because I mean, we've all probably thought that as writers, but it was such a great snapshot of that moment. But yeah, I know that the way in my books, the way I work is I pull up the chapter that I wrote most recently, and I edit my way through it, and then when I get to the bottom, I just keep writing. That's the way I write as an adult book. And in this case, while you were showering in the morning, I would clean. I would go through and I would go through for typos, but I wasn't allowed to change anything without her sitting there because she would have killed me.
Trust issues.
Thanks. And so we did polish the book, but it was before it went to the editor.
Right.
And then there was another massive overhaul, this fall, like I said, when we were doing our editing between 10 and 12 midnight via speakerphone, which is when a college student can edit.
Okay. I haven't finished Between the Lines yet, so if you might have answered it in the book. But what if they are acting out their lives for the characters every time a book is open? What if two people are reading it at the same time, but they're on a different page?
Well, but this book is special. This is a one-off. And so we make sure to establish that in Between the Lines, that Jessamine Jacobs wrote this book as like one self-published copy, basically for her son Edgar. Right, and so that it winds up mysteriously getting lost in a move and winding up into Lila's library. So it's not as if there would ever be more than one reader at one time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit of magic to Between the Lines, we think. Yeah.
So you're talking a lot about what it's like to write with adult children or teenagers. I started reading your books 20 years ago with Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
I was 7.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was 6 when I wrote it.
So, just as a mother, and my kids are older now, but I remember reading at the time wondering, like, how could you ever get the time to write? I had 3 young children.
Yeah, I wrote, I mean, I've been writing for 22 years. How old is Kyle? 25? Yeah, 22 years. So I was basically the primary caretaker for a long time with my kids, and I was writing, and I would write when, Barney was on TV, when they were playing nicely. I used to take my computer to nursery school pickup, and I would type on the dashboard until it was time for Kyle to come out of nursery school. I used to take my computer to swim practice, things like that. And I would literally write any 15-minute block I had, because that was all I had. Then my kids got older, and the most magical thing happened. Organized school. And they were gone for 8 hours a day. And that was when I wrote. And then I magically became a mom the minute they came back home. I also had a remarkable husband who was really, really supportive, and who, would, especially when they were tiny before they went to organized school, I would be with them during the day, and then he would take them from 6 o'clock on the minute he came home, and I would write from 6 to 10 because he knew it was really important to me. So sometimes I think the question that you should ask is not, how did you write with kids, but how did you stay married? Because I never saw him. And then eventually when my career started to really take off and I was being asked to tour more and to write a lot, he made the decision, a very self-sacrificing decision, to stay at home with the kids. And we figured out the other day, you were like 6 or 7 when that happened. So it was really for Sammy's entire school career that he was the primary caretaker, and I was writing and I was going on tours and doing all these other things. And really, if I didn't have the support of my husband and the grace of my kids to share me with readers, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do.
I think we have time for one last question.
Okay. Someone over here, fun, yeah.
I was wondering, another one?
Another
Is there a theory to this, or another subject, or?
I know I said this last time, but for right now, I'm gonna say no. But I mean, that's what I said with Between the Lines, and look what happened. I think my plan right now is to finish college, because I decided that going to college and having a career is really, really hard. So my first plan is to do junior, senior year. And then I'm actually at Vassar right now on a special track to be certified to teach elementary education, and by the time I graduate. And so my thought process is that as an elementary educator, I would have my summers off, so there is time for writing, technically. But for right now, college.
I'm going to say yes.
Then you go on.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming.